At 11:14 a.m. on January 11, 1944, 7 miles east of Bremen, the sky tears open. A Mustang dives out of winter glare, wings trembling in a vertical slash toward frozen earth. Cloud vapor whips across its canopy like torn silk. Inside, First Lieutenant Charles Hap Chandler holds his breath as tracers claw upward from below, red sparks reaching, grasping for aluminum and flesh. The altimeter unwinds like a panic clock spinning backwards. His Merlin engine screams, coolant needle flirting with the red zone but refusing to climb higher. He yanks a level at treetop height, throttle firewalled against the stop. Behind him, a Messerschmitt Bf 109 struggles to match the plunge, engine coughing in thick, cold air near sea level. Hap hears his crew chief's words like a ghost in the headset. She'll cool herself faster than she'll cook. A radiator door flexes in the slipstream below, funneling ice-cold air through a strange scoop under the belly. Backwards by every textbook written before 1940. And in that instant, one pilot survives because one German-born American engineer refused to follow the rulebook. Some victories start on drafting paper, long before they roar across a battlefield. North American Aviation's Inglewood plant smells of steel shavings, hot machine oil, and desert dust blown in from Imperial Valley test flights on April 12, 1940. Late afternoon sunlight cuts through factory windows, filmed with months of grime, painting aircraft frames in gold and industrial shadow. Edgar Schmued stands over a wooden mock-up section, sleeves rolled to his elbows, mechanical pencil tapping against the smooth curve of a fuselage spine. He is small in stature, serious in demeanor, restless in thought. The kind of man whose silence makes junior engineers straighten their postures and double-check their calculations. Around him, draftsmen fight afternoon fatigue, chalk dust clinging to white shirts, already damp with sweat despite the ventilation fans. News crackles from a Philco radio in the corner, Europe burning city by city, Luftwaffe taking another position that Americans cannot yet pronounce correctly, but Schmued hears only engines in his mind, imagined ones, singing at altitudes where air grows thin and cold. Speed is everything in fighter design, and speed demands perfect airflow over every surface. A British Purchasing Commission request sits on his supervisor's desk upstairs. Design and prototype a modern fighter aircraft in 120 days. He whispers in German-accented English to no one in particular. Then we start immediately. The pencil stops tapping against wood. The war, still invisible here in California sunshine, has just chosen its weaponsmith, and Edgar Schmued intends to forge something the enemy cannot outrun or outclimb. Days bleed into nights through June and July 1940 as the Battle of Britain begins over the English Channel. Cigarettes burn down to paper ghosts in ashtrays never emptied. Schmued squints at cross-section, drawings under harsh desk lamps, laminar wing contours traced with the precision of surgical incisions. A young North American engineer named Jack Northcutt leans over the drafting table, tie loosened, eyes red from 16-hour shifts. Cooling system configuration, Mr. Schmued? Standard belly radiator like the P-40? No, Schmued answers too quickly, without looking up. Standards create acceptable performance. We need exceptional. He flips through a technical paper from Britain's Royal Aircraft Establishment, pages annotated in his neat German script. The Meredith effect theory, exhaust heat recovery converted to thrust through proper ducting design, a radiator that adds power instead of subtracting it. Unthinkable to most aeronautical engineers. Irresistible to Edgar Schmued. Outside the drafting room windows, a Curtiss P-40 test aircraft shrieks overhead during an evening hop, propeller bite fading into brown Los Angeles smog. Its heavy chin-mounted radiator installation drags the nose down during landings, a flying compromise between cooling needs and aerodynamic efficiency. Not here, not this time, not with this design. Schmued draws a long, clean intake opening under the fuselage centerline, narrow entrance throat, gradually expanding internal duct, smooth exit outlet angled to recover pressure, as aerodynamically refined as a bullet cross-section. Engineers gather around, doubt creeping into tired eyes and compressed lips. If we miscalculate the duct geometry, Northcutt murmurs quietly, she overheats at combat altitude. Schmued nods once, acknowledging the risk without flinching. But if we calculate correctly, she outruns anything currently flying. He circles the duct throat dimension with his pencil, the graphite line cutting a future into wood pulp paper. Some risks define the razor line between an adequate weapon and an enduring legend. Heat waves shimmer off Mojave Desert sand on October 26, 1940. A prototype aircraft, still showing fabric control surfaces over an Allison V1710 engine smelling of fresh assembly grease, waits on the test strip like a predator not yet taught to bite. Mechanics hand crank inertia starters, sweat pooling on aluminum tool trays, cotton shirts stuck to sunburned backs. Schmued watches from beside a fuel truck, arms crossed over his chest. Heartbeat steady but coiled with tension. The radiator scoop protrudes beneath the fuselage like an engineering dare made physical. Test pilot Vance Brees straps into the cramped cockpit, leather helmet creaking as he adjusts the fit. "If your magic duct cooks me at altitude," he shouts over the starter whine, "I'm haunting your drafting table for eternity." Schmued's smile is razor thin and doesn't reach his eyes. It will breathe properly. The Allison engine catches with a cough and sputter, then rises to a sustained roar that scatters dust devils across the hardpan. Brees releases brakes, the prototype lunging forward across packed earth like it wants, to outrun its own propeller shadow. It lifts after 400 yards, wobbling briefly then climbing smooth and straight into cloudless desert sky. Schmued allows himself to breathe only when the aircraft becomes a silver speck against blue infinity. A clipboard notation behind him, written by Chief Engineer Raymond Rice, reads like cautious prophecy. Coolant temperature stable through climb, duct efficiency promising at cruise power settings. But promising means nothing in engineering until it faces the stress test of combat operations. The NA-73X prototype lands 22 minutes later, tires kissing earth with barely a chirp. Brees climbs out grinning, slapping the fuselage with genuine affection. "She wants to go faster than I let her," he reports simply. Schmued nods, allowing no celebration. The real test waits across an ocean, in skies filled with experienced enemies. The wind tunnel at NACA Ames Research Center in Moffett Field thunders like a hurricane trapped inside steel-ribbed containment on February 17, 1941. Technicians shout pressure readings and temperature deltas over the mechanical howl, their voices barely audible above the roar. Laminar airflow is studied here with religious devotion. Precision measurement serves as its daily scripture. A 1/10 scale P-51 model hangs suspended in the test stream, miniature radiator duct sensors twitching like exposed nerves during surgery. Schmued leans forward beside NACA engineer Marie Collins, one of only 3 women working in the aerodynamics section. Sharp-eyed behind government-issue spectacles, sleeves rolled past her elbows, jaw set with professional determination. "Your duct installation isn't merely cooling the engine," she says over the blast, consulting her instrument panel. "It's recovering ram pressure loss. You're generating measurable thrust. Schmued nods slowly, though doubt claws at his certainty. On calculation paper, yes. Here in empirical testing, we measure actual truth. She glances at the data strip pulling through its recording housing, watching thermal signatures and boundary layer thickness measurements appear as inked lines. Velocity gradients shift as technicians adjust model angle of attack. Truth arrives as numbers, not opinions. Exit temperature spike converted to velocity gain. 14 feet per second at cruise power settings. Collins grins despite professional protocol. Frederick Meredith would be grinning himself senseless seeing this. Schmued says nothing, fighting the internal battle between engineering pride and combat fear. The war in Europe grows louder and bloodier by the week. Development time grows shorter. Production pressure increases daily. If his cooling system fails in combat, pilots burn alive in cockpits at 25,000 feet. If it succeeds exactly as designed, they chase fear from European skies. A warning buzzer cuts through the wind tunnel roar. The test stream dies to silence. The room collectively exhales tension. This machine might actually rewrite accepted aerodynamic rules written by experts with decades more experience. Morning rain on July 3, 1942, turns the RAF Duxford flight line to cold East Anglian mud. Ground crews curse under dripping canvas tarps, breath visible in summer chill. Olive-drab Mustang MK aircraft, still equipped with Allison engines, still learning their combat limitations, sit like restless horses awaiting riders. American design wearing British roundels, the transatlantic marriage born of military necessity. Edgar Schmued steps from a transport truck, wool coat pulled tight against persistent drizzle. He travelled here to witness the Mustang meet operational reality, not wind tunnel abstractions or blueprint theory, but actual war. Men with grease-blackened hands and oil-stained coveralls swarm him almost immediately. She's brilliantly fast at low-level reconnaissance, a British fitter says flatly, Yorkshire accent thick. But she overheats like the devil's kettle above 20,000 feet. Schmued removes rain-spotted glasses, wiping them carefully with a handkerchief. The duct design works perfectly, the man interrupts without malice. It's the bloody Allison engine that can't breathe thin air. He looks across the muddy dispersal area at a dozen Mustangs, coughing warm exhaust breath into fog. Mechanics slam cowling panels, pilots pace near operations huts, breath white with pre-sortie nerves. A supermarine Spitfire screams overhead on patrol, all elegance in motion, but critically short-legged on internal fuel. The air war desperately needs extended range capability. Schmued touches the cold aluminum skin near the radiator installation, the distinctive scoop beneath. It hums with trapped potential, brilliant design imprisoned by insufficient power plant. He speaks quietly to himself in English, tinged with Bavarian cadence. She needs a Merlin engine. Overhead, grey English sky seems to nod in silent agreement. By August, official discussions begin between North American Aviation, the RAF, and Rolls-Royce about re-engineering the airframe. The war cannot wait for perfect timing. Records later showed this conversation repeated in a dozen locations before formal approval arrived. Maps plaster every vertical surface in North American Aviation's war production room on November 12, 1942. Manufacturing charts drown desks in paper avalanches. Telephone lines hiss with static like restless serpents carrying urgent military communications. The Mustang proves itself daily in RAF service. Too good to waste on limited missions, too altitude limited for bomber escort duty. US Army Air Forces leadership remains focused elsewhere. Bomber generals trust mass defensive firepower more than fighter escort philosophy. Long-range penetration seems impossible. Edgar Schmued stands before assembled brass and civilian contract suits. A slide projector clicks methodically. Aircraft silhouettes swim across performance, charts mounted on easels. With the Rolls-Royce Merlin installation, he states calmly, pointer tapping engine performance diagrams, the Mustang will reach combat altitude with substantial power reserves, and the Radiator duct installation will convert cooling drag into measurable thrust recovery. A colonel from right field raises a skeptical eyebrow. Radiator thrust? That contradicts basic thermodynamics. Measured empirically, verified through NACA wind tunnel testing. Schmued refuses to flinch under scrutiny. Numbers matter more than passion in military procurement rooms. He provides numbers: rate of climb doubled at altitude, operational range extended beyond 800 miles, maximum speed unmatched by any production fighter currently flying. Silence stretches across 30 seconds that feel like 30 minutes. Finally, a procurement officer mutters almost reluctantly, "We'll authorize prototype conversion. Limited production if testing succeeds." Schmued nods once and gathers his presentation materials, heart pounding against his ribs despite outward calm. He does not celebrate. There exists no victory yet, only a narrow door opening onto a hallway filled with new technical risks and tighter deadlines. If the Merlin power plant fails to integrate properly, the Mustang program dies in bureaucratic infancy. Outside the building, another B-17 formation drones overhead toward training ranges. Heavy bombers that will soon need escorts deeper into German airspace than any fighter has yet reached. The mathematics are brutal. Without long-range escort, bomber losses climb toward unsustainable percentages. Time becomes the scarcest resource in aircraft development. Merlin engines arrive at Inglewood during March 1943 like precious treasure in wooden crates stenciled Rolls-Royce, Limited and Packard Motor Car Company. Mechanics whistle low in appreciation. The V1650 Merlin gleams under assembly bay lights, compact fury rendered in machined steel and polished brass. Edgar Schmued maintains constant presence as technicians carefully lower the first engine into a modified Mustang airframe. Fuel lines snake through crowded engine compartments. Coolant pipes connect with precision fittings. Fingers scrape knuckles, raw against sharp aluminum edges. The radiator duct receives recalculation, internal angles shaved by millimeters to accommodate new heat load requirements. Jack Northcutt checks exit flap mechanisms with micrometer precision, measuring tolerances to thousandths of an inch. If cooling airflow runs excessively cool at altitude, we adjust flap positions. Schmued's answer carries iron certainty. A young mechanic laughs nervously, wiping oil from his hands. And if she runs too hot during combat power settings? No. Schmued turns to face him directly. It will not overheat. The mathematics are sound. Outside assembly bay doors, the roar of war production never stops. Rivet guns firing like machine guns, stamping presses shaking. Concrete floors, workers moving with purpose through organized chaos. The first Merlin-powered Mustang, designated XP-51B, rolls from final assembly on April 15, 1943. Paint still soft enough to mark with careful fingerprints. Schmued rests his palm against the radiator scoop, feeling cold aluminum through his skin. Cold metal housing hot ambition and 4 years of design refinement. Chief Engineer Ed Hawkey signs the flight release authorization. Test pilot Bob Chilton begins pre-flight inspection with methodical thoroughness. History often begins with a single ignition switch being flipped to the on position. The Packard Merlin coughs twice, catches, then roars to life with a sound distinctly different from the Allison, deeper, angrier, more powerful in every measurable parameter. Schmued watches without expression, but his hands tremble slightly at his sides. Everything depends on the next 2 hours of flight testing. There are moments when the entire world seems to hold its breath and wait. The XP-51B lifts from Inglewood's runway on April 30th, 1943, at 13:47 hours. The Packard Merlin sings like controlled anger, given aluminum wings. Edgar Schmued watches from beside the control tower, jaw muscles tight, chest completely still. Test pilot Bob Chilton climbs steeply, impossibly steep for this airframe configuration 12 months earlier. Radio transmission crackles through tower speakers. Coolant temperature holding steady, manifold pressure normal, speed. Christ, Edgar, she's genuinely fast. Schmued closes his eyes behind his spectacles. Numbers cascade through his mind like a waterfall. Exit temperature ratios, duct efficiency coefficients, compressibility margins at various altitudes. Attempt radiator flaps at half-open position, he says into the microphone with controlled voice. A pause lasting 5 seconds. Then Chilton's voice returns. Speed increased approximately 9 miles per hour. Temperature remains stable. Schmued opens his eyes slowly. The Mustang streaks past the tower in a shallow dive, silver flash against California blue sky. A British technical observer from the RAF delegation shakes his head in obvious disbelief. How in bloody hell does a radiator installation provide thrust instead of drag? Schmued answers quietly, almost to himself, by absolutely refusing to waste thermal energy unnecessarily. The aircraft completes 27 minutes of high-speed testing before entering the landing pattern. Tires kiss concrete with gentle precision. The official test report will read, fastest United States production fighter aircraft tested to date. Performance exceeds all projections. But technical reports do not capture what this moment feels like inside a human chest. Heartbeats and relief do. Right field engineering officers request immediate transfer of the prototype for comprehensive military evaluation. Now the machine needs an actual war to prove itself operationally, or die trying against experienced Luftwaffe pilots. Production orders arrive within 6 weeks. 300 aircraft initially, expanding to thousands if combat performance confirms testing results. The radiator scoop that nearly ended Edgar Schmued's career will soon help define it. Cold December wind cuts across RAF Leiston Airfield in Suffolk like physical punishment on the morning of December 20th, 1943. Frost coats Mustang wings in crystalline patterns. Men's breath hangs heavy under dim maintenance lamps. The 8th Air Force prepares for another daylight penetration mission over German industrial targets. Another calculated gamble, measured in lives and irreplaceable aircraft. Republic P-47 Thunderbolts and Lockheed P-38 Lightnings can escort bomber formations only to the German border before fuel reserves force them home. When they turn back, Boeing B-17 Fortresses bleed alone under concentrated Luftwaffe attacks. Edgar Schmued walks the flight line at dawn, civilian identification badge clipped to his coat. Ground crews check coolant lines for leaks, arm 50 caliber machine guns, slam ammunition belts into cold receivers with practiced efficiency. A pilot, First Lieutenant Charles Hap Chandler, 354th Fighter Group, spots the quiet engineer and approaches. You the radiator wizard everyone mentions? Schmued nods once, uncomfortable with the attention. Chandler slaps the distinctive ventral scoop with genuine affection. Keeps me alive at 25,000 feet. Heard you argued like hell with the brass about this design. The design argued for itself through wind tunnel data. Schmued replies softly. Packard Merlin engines cough to life sequentially down the line, wingtips trembling with mechanical vibration. Frost melts rapidly under exhaust heat. The familiar smell of high-octane aviation fuel and human fear mixes into a scent every combat airfield shares. The morning briefing echoes in memory. Berlin strike force, escort mission to maximum range, heavy opposition expected over target area, loss estimates classified but substantial. Chandler climbs into his cockpit, canopy sliding closed like a guillotine blade descending. Schmued steps back from the flight line as propeller wash whips his coat. The sky is about to render final judgment on 4 years of engineering decisions. 37 Mustangs taxi for takeoff. By nightfall, 34 will return. The mathematics of aerial combat never forgive engineering errors. The world above Germany on January 11th, 1944 reduces to white sun, black flak bursts, and silver wings reflecting winter light. Mustangs weave protective patterns above bomber box formations like wolves circling a threatened herd. Radio chatter crackles through headsets, calm professional voices hiding layered panic. Lieutenant Chandler scans the horizon methodically. Contrails curl like chalk scars across frozen heaven at 26,000 feet. Then contact. Enemy fighters, dozens of them, spearing down from altitude advantage. Messerschmitt Bf-109s Focke-Wulf, FW-190s, the Luftwaffe's most experienced pilots, flying its best equipment. Chandler pushes throttle forward smoothly. The radiator exit door adjusts automatically through mechanical linkage, a precisely engineered breath response. Coolant temperature rises toward yellow zone, stabilizes, holds. The ventral scoop swallows rushing ice-cold air at 400 miles per hour, converts waste heat into measurable forward thrust. He climbs aggressively to meet the attacking formation, not diving defensively, climbing into direct engagement. German pilots hesitate visibly, formation discipline wavering. No American fighter type climbs like this at altitude. Browning machine guns chatter, synchronized through propeller arc. Tracers paint geometric patterns across thin air. A Mustang breaks formation trailing white coolant vapor, mortally wounded. Streaming like a dying comet, someone screams over the radio frequency until transmission cuts abruptly to static. Chandler locks a Bf-109 in his gun sight, fires a 3-second burst. Enemy wings shear away. The Messerschmitt tumbles. He dives away from the engagement, radiator door automatically shrinking its aperture opening, parasitic drag nearly vanishing. A breathless voice cuts through radio chaos. Where the hell did these Mustangs come from? They're staying with us all the way? Chandler answers between crushing G-forces during a vertical reversal. From an engineer who absolutely hated slowing down for anything. Below, bomber formations continue east toward target. Above, Mustangs remain as lethal silver guardians. For the first time in daylight bombing campaign history, escorts reach Berlin. Loss rates drop immediately. The strategic air war shifts on the fulcrum of cooling system design. Some victories are measured in pilots who return home alive. Fuel gauges read critically low. Gun barrels still radiate heat. The long road home stretches across hostile territory. Bomber crews watch their escort fighters still maintaining formation, for the first time in this brutal air war reaching all the way to target and back again. Where P-47 Thunderbolts once vanished at the German border, Mustangs remain like loyal blades, refusing to abandon their charges. Chandler's coolant temperature gauge flickers near yellow zone during one final throttle burst to intercept a trailing FW-190. The radiator exit door shifts again automatically, tiny mechanical correction providing critical thermal salvation. Air rips through the carefully shaped duct, thrust bleeding off dangerous heat through pure physics and Edgar Schmued's stubborn mathematics. He whispers to the machine, to the distant engineer who designed it, "Hold together just a little longer." Clouds part like stage curtains. England's coastline returns like geographical forgiveness. As main gear wheels touch grass at RAF Leiston, Chandler exhales an entire day's accumulated fear in one violent breath. Mechanics swarm immediately. Oil smell and prop wash and shouted questions, hands still shaking from adrenaline and cold. A crew chief pats the ventral scoop almost reverently. "Ran her hot during combat?" "Ran her exactly hot enough to stay alive," Chandler replies, voice hoarse. Somewhere behind the dispersal area, partially hidden behind a fuel truck, Edgar Schmued watches without being acknowledged. He murmurs in German, then English, "Gut, good." But his face carries visible weight, thinking of every aircraft that did not return, every pilot trusting metal and aerodynamic theory against experienced enemies. Intelligence officers tally results. 34 Mustangs returned from 37 launched. 3 lost. But bomber losses dropped to 4%, lowest percentage recorded on deep penetration missions. Victory never arrives without accompanying ghosts walking beside it. That evening, Schmued writes a brief letter to his wife in California. He does not mention the combat mission, only that the cooling system performed within acceptable parameters under extreme operational stress. The letter survives in archives, understated as the man who wrote it. The Inglewood factory never sleeps through late 1944 as Allied armies push across France. Production lines run triple shifts. Rows of P-51D Mustangs roll toward completion like aluminum promises of air superiority. Workers trade rumors between rivet guns. Berlin shaking under round-the-clock bombing. The Luftwaffe bleeding out. Edgar Schmued walks the factory floor quieter than before. Professional fame whispers around him through aviation publications and military citations, but he deliberately avoids attention. He visits test bays regularly, radiator ducts gleaming under inspection lamps like polished declarations of engineering principle. A young draftsman approaches during a floor inspection, eager with technical curiosity. "Mr. Schmued, reports claim the scoop installation returns 5 to 10 miles per hour at combat altitude." Schmued nods, correcting gently with characteristic precision. "More than that at optimal altitude, perhaps 15 miles per hour when airflow conditions are correct. Verified through operational data. German technical intelligence apparently calls it unfair advantage." Schmued allows himself the ghost of a smile. There is no fairness in survival, only mathematics and superior execution. On a pegboard near his desk hangs a memo clipped from an RAF tactical memorandum dated September 1944. "Mustang effective to Berlin and return. Turning tide of bomber escort losses. Recommend maximum production priority." He touches the paper briefly, as if confirming physical reality against engineering dreams. Outside, another Packard Merlin undergoes acceptance testing, rising to a sustained howl that drowns doubt. By year's end, production reaches 400 aircraft monthly. Operational Mustang groups multiply across England. The strategic bombing campaign achieves sustainable loss rates for the first time. Some battles are won in complete silence by hands permanently stained with graphite and slide rule calculations instead of gunpowder and blood. Schmued never visits Germany after the war. He continues designing aircraft for North American, including early jet prototypes, but rarely discusses the Mustang publicly. His personnel file contains one notation from 1945. Instrumental in development of war-winning fighter aircraft, performance exceeded all military requirements. Typical military understatement masking extraordinary engineering achievement. The war dies across Europe through April 1945. Germany burns low like a candle guttering toward darkness. Mustangs roam skies, once ruled by Luftwaffe eagles. Today's sortie, April 10th, 1945, is listed as routine, if war ever truly can be. Lieutenant Chandler flies mission lead. Below, rivers curl silver through broken industrial landscapes. He thinks about that first desperate dive over Bremen 15 months earlier, radiator holding temperature like an engineering promise made physical. He's older now. Everyone who survives combat ages beyond calendar years. Suddenly, a lone Messerschmitt Me 262 jet streaks past at impossible speed, shark fast, representing the immediate future. Then a Mustang dives behind it, radiator door shut completely, parasitic drag almost eliminated. A technological duel spanning 2 generations of aerial warfare. The jet escapes untouched. Chandler doesn't curse. The world is already changing beneath their wings. Engineers already sketching swept wings and afterburners. Back in California, Edgar Schmued reads a classified cable dated April 30th, 1945. P-51 Mustang confirmed dominant Allied escort fighter. Strategic bombing loss rates reduced 73% since deployment. Operational effectiveness unprecedented. He sets the telegram down carefully. No triumph roar, just a long, slow exhale. His war was fought with calipers, wind tunnel data, sleepless nights, and one stubborn engineering belief. Waste heat could be converted into combat advantage. History will remember the pilots who flew the missions. Pilots will remember the engineer who made survival mathematically possible. Final documented image, Edgar Schmued walks past a completed Mustang on the Inglewood flight line, hand trailing along its fuselage. The camera perspective lingers on the radiator scoop, dark and quiet now. Once a furnace converting thermal waste into life-saving thrust. A real archival quote appears in official records. The P-51 Mustang's exceptional performance at high altitude was due in no small part to the radiator duct installation design. Without this innovation, strategic escort operations to Berlin and beyond would not have been operationally feasible. Air Technical Service Command. Engineering Analysis, September 1945. Sometimes the loudest victories are born from quiet genius, refusing to accept conventional limitations.